Thank you very much. We have our moderator. Let me welcome our panelists who just arrived now. His Excellency, the Governor of Ondo State, Arakunrin Rotimi Akeredolu, SAN. Let me also welcome here Brigadier General Saleh Bala, retired CEO, White Ink Consult. No, over here, sir. Your Excellency, yes, you're part of the panel. And then, General, please. Mr. Ndubisi Anyanwu, Country Director, Messico. Mr. Patrick Okigbo, please join us. And now finally, His Excellency, the Governor of Kaduna State, Malam Nasiru El-Rufai. Your Excellency.
Securing our future, the fierce urgency of now. The state of insecurity in Nigeria has spiraled undoubtedly and has impacted every aspect of Nigerian life: economic, social, psychological, political, and physical. As the strategies and structure put in place to curtail insecurity become glaringly ineffective and inefficient, it is crucial to re-examine and re-strategize the fight against insecurity in Nigeria. Plenary 3, a pragmatic approach to security paradigms and dimensions. This plenary is interpreted for our virtual audience in Pidgin, Hausa, Igbo, French, and Yoruba. Follow the on-screen instructions to gain access. Ladies and gentlemen, please make welcome our panelists for this plenary.
Let me go to our moderator. And I saw you drinking water. You need it because your panel is high-powered. Over to you.
Okay. Thank you very much. And thank you. I'm very honored to be moderating this plenary today on this very important issue for Nigeria. So I'm happy to have everyone here, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, Your Excellencies, the Governor of Kaduna and Ondo states, and of course, Ndubisi and former retired General Bala, thank you, and Patrick. So I think Patrick is going to kick us off with a little bit of a framing discussion, and then we will go into the discussion.
Ladies and gentlemen, all protocols duly observed. Allow me to commend and appreciate the Nigeria Economic Summit Group for its continued commitment to Nigeria's development. It's no easy feat to have done this summit 27 years in a row. Thank you for the opportunity to share some thoughts on Nigeria's security challenges and potential solutions. At Nextier SPD, we keep a close eye on security challenges and collect data to understand them. We publish a daily analysis of the security situation and frequently convene platforms to explore answers. I'll use the short 15 minutes I have to provide some insights for this engagement. Now, Nigeria has a banditry problem. Here is what we know. Nigeria is facing its most significant governance and security challenges since its independence. Since the return to democratic rule in May 1919, there has been a spike in agitation from various groups and individuals. Insecurity and escalating violent conflicts have remained at an all-time high since 2018. These conflicts result in avoidable deaths, injuries, kidnappings, and destruction of property. While the security threats and conflicts were initially concentrated in specific regions, the violence has become a contagion, with multiple regions experiencing similar conflict types. Data from the Nextier SPD Violent Conflict Database shows that in the 12 months to September 2021, Nigeria recorded 890 incidents of violent conflict, resulting in 3,787 deaths, 340 injured persons, and 2,542 kidnapped persons. 90.3% of the fatalities were civilians, while the balance were security agents. It's important to point out that the database is populated with data from media-related reported violent conflicts and verified through credible sources. The most significant conflicts rank ordered by the number of incidents are as follows: banditry, farmer-herder conflicts, terrorism, extrajudicial killings, cultism, armed robbery, civil unrest, communal clashes, group conflict, and maritime piracy. Of the 890 incidents in the last 12 months to September 2021, banditry came in first with 68% of the incidents. Farmer-herder conflicts were second with 8% of the incidents, while terrorism, which used to be the main conflict, came in third with 5% of the incidents. When ranked by the total number of victims, which is calculated as the number of casualties, injured, and kidnapped, banditry is still in the first position with 78% of the total victims. Thus, Nigeria has a banditry problem. Please note that all the data and more are shared in the background paper for this session, which is titled Stemming the Tears. It was shared, I believe, last night. Nigeria is in a cocktail of maladies. It's caught in a perfect storm conditioned by ecological changes, climate-induced pressures, low levels of productivity leading to unemployment, lack of education, rapid population growth, and many other factors. In addition, subsisting government or governance challenges have worsened the cocktail of maladies. Banditry is a natural projection from various crimes that have remained unchecked. Governor Masari of Katsina argues that it's the cattle rustlers, who've transitioned to become bandits. He's right. Some Boko Haram fighters have also joined their ranks, as banditry is a more lucrative enterprise. The proliferation of small arms and light weapons means that Nigeria's armed forces are outgunned. A 2020 SBM intelligence report estimates that about 6.15 million small arms and light weapons are in circulation among the civilian population. The armed forces and law enforcement agencies collectively account for just about 0.6 million firearms. While there are many explanations for the rise of insecurity and violence in the country, pragmatic solutions remain limited and receive even more limited state engagement or response. To counter banditry, Nigeria should address the root causes of violence by leveraging local intelligence from the communities. In addition, the state must upscale the capacity of its security and allied non-state outfits for coordinated attacks while preventing and maintaining peace in an already secure environment to avoid reprisal attacks. To resolve the escalating farmer-herder conflicts, Nigeria needs to operationalize the already designated grazing reserves, facilitate the establishment of commercial cattle ranches, establish mediation and dialogue structures, conduct an extensive mop-up of arms, and push for an amendment of the ECOWAS Protocol on Transhumance Migration. Since Boko Haram's emergence in 2009, its violent extremism has escalated with the emergence of other terrorist organizations vying for prominence in the orgy of death and destruction. To curtail terrorism in Nigeria, the government must address the root causes of socio-economic and political exclusion. A security sector reform requires building the capacity of the state security agents and providing them with the requisite equipment and duty of care. Tactical monitoring of the porous borders and ungoverned spaces will help to track the activities of insurgents. On secession agitation, the quest for self-determination is considered damaging when it becomes violent. Therefore, the repressive strategy should be revised with room for peaceful engagement, such as dialogue, and national conferences to address the rising secessionist agitations across the country. Furthermore, the national question on true federalism needs to be answered by restructuring the country's lopsided political and fiscal structures. Finally, the security threat around the agitation include the fear of state violence against the different groups. Kidnapping is considered one of Nigeria's most organized crimes. With the growing number of incidents and victims, the challenge virtually affects every aspect of our national life. Therefore, Nigeria needs to create an actionable intelligence network, collaborating with the state and the local communities. These solutions include creating a community policing structure that leverages technology in securing ungoverned rural spaces. Cultism is another rising threat. Some of the issues I've mentioned above play out with that as well. As a multi-ethnic, ethno-religious and cultural nation, rivalries and competition are bound to occur. In resolving the violent communal clashes, Nigeria needs to revamp its criminal justice system to restore peace, faith, and public confidence, thereby reducing reprisal attacks. On ending piracy, while there's a significant reduction in the attacks in the Gulf of Guinea, the attacks have shifted to the internal waterways. The effort should be to reduce the attractiveness of piracy as an economic activity by creating meaningful opportunities for the expanding youth population. In addition, a partnership between stakeholders in the riverine communities will ensure access to intelligence required to break up the criminal gangs. But you may say or ask yourself, where's the insight in what I've presented? Much of what I've shared here have been robustly discussed in the literature and at various discourse fora. The armed forces and the political leadership in Nigeria understand many of these issues, yet the government shows a limited capacity to deal with the conflicts. Why? Nigeria's inability to solve its problems is a misalignment of skills to roles and a misalignment of incentives. People in authority are hardly penalized for failures or rewarded for success. Therefore, there's no real incentive to solve any difficult problems in Nigeria. On the other hand, Nigeria's elite, like other human beings, will rise to the occasion when presented or faced with the right incentives. Take Nigeria's COVID-19 response, for instance. When it became clear that there was no place to run, that no one could escape to London or Germany to get medical help, the political leadership responded. Capable hands, not political cronies, were put in charge of the Nigeria Center for Disease Control and the Presidential Task Force on COVID-19. The bureaucracy, led by the Secretary to the Government of the Federation, showed up for work. Testing centers and isolation centers were built in record time. Proper communication followed. Seeing the government's sincerity of purpose, Nigeria's private sector responded with the Coalition for COVID. They mobilized resources, they deployed solutions. Nigerians dodged the bullet. We are yet to see a similar response to any of the security issues we have discussed. Why? If the option exists to exercise a plan B, we won't solve the problem. Many state governors who should be in their home states tackling the security challenges escape to Abuja and run their states from here. The same can be said for many of the other socioeconomic and political challenges we have. Those who should solve them know that they have an escape ticket in their back pockets. So why bother? Why bother with the difficult task of solving the difficult problems? But there are no easy answers here. With declining revenues, slow economic growth rate, high unemployment, matched by high population growth, Nigeria is in trouble. But the challenges are not a death sentence. Several countries with far less human and natural resources have withered far greater problems. What is required is a rework of our incentive scheme. If the leadership can penalize those who fail to deliver, Nigeria will be able to solve its problems. Get the right people in position. Anyone who follows the English Premier League knows that the team that feels the best players always wins. I guess there might be some Arsenal fans in here. They'll know that we're right. The Nigeria Economic Summit Group has convened an interesting panel to discuss these security challenges. The panelists understand that surmounting Nigeria's obstinate insecurity challenges is pertinent to engendering and implementing a practical strategy for growth. Having presented the what of the problem, I hope the panel discussion will focus on the how. Success depends to a great extent on sanctions and rewards and fielding the best team. The simple question is, can Nigeria deliver on these two simple tasks? I wish you successful deliberations and thank you for your attention. Thank you.
Thank you, Patrick. And thank you for setting the scene so that will allow us to try to start to tackle the solutions. So I'd like to ask Your Excellency Governor Akeredolu to start by telling us a little bit about what you're doing to tackle insecurity in your state. And remember, a very brief opening comments, and then we'll go into a bigger discussion.
All right. Thank you so much. And the co-panelists, I agree with all of you. I thank the Nigerian Economic Summit.
Can you maybe, because we can. Yes.
Okay.
Thank you.
For putting this up, and I'm sure that all of us have one or two things to gain from this. The way I start, the way I'm going to Ondo State, really is that I've always held this view, and I want to say it again, that no matter what, a nation will be set for to fail if its security system cannot be sure of it, if it cannot be sure of its educational system, and justice system is also a problem. These are the major problems for me that I see. Yes, we have had a rise in crime. The dimension it has taken is surprised all of us in recent time. Most of us are surprised. But I, for one, have a problem. When you put issue of banditry and you put it about 68%, I will come with terrorism, I will say it's about 5%. There must be a problem there. In that, I for one believe, let us call a spade and not an agricultural implement. What we are having, that you have branded banditry majorly, is terrorism. Let us just agree on that. But let us agree. It must start. That's how we start. If we all agreed and focused, then we'll know what to do. So when you say terrorism about 5%, how? Terrorism is on the rise. People are infiltrating our borders as they like. People are coming from different areas in West Africa and are here. We can't run away from it. And it's not banditry, it is terrorism. And
okay.
You come ahead, you go and burn the railway. It's a new dimension. So okay. This is where I believe. But yes, in Ondo State, where you said what happened in my own state, yes, I can be restricted to that. We don't have much of terrorism, but our problem, farmer herders
Okay.
and kidnap for ransom. Yes, some people are involved in organs, sale of organs and co. No, we have drug abuse, and they have agitation for self-determination. All these had led to some insecurity. So what we have done in those states is that, look, we have always preached and multi-level policing. Because multi-level policing, we believe that we must have layered structure for policing. And seriously speaking, yes, when Frank was laying down his guideline, he made reference to something. What has happened with COVID? What happened, how the committee headed by the SGF, how they worked so hard, how everybody came up when issue of COVID came. Why are we not coming up on security?
Okay.
Why are we not having a committee on it at federal level that will tackle security? And that committee will take it one by one. I think we will get to that later.
Yes,
Those
yes.
are the issues we'll get to. But
Yeah.
what we did is that when we found out that there was nothing that was going to come
Yeah.
in terms of to secure the lives and properties of our people, we had no option than to now go into what I would call a state form of security outfit. And that was what led to Amotekun. And Amotekun today is, for us, in Southwest, in Ondo State, it's been a good omen.
So we'll come back to that. So let's stop there. We'll come back to that because I have definitely a few questions. So Governor El-Rufai, maybe you can start again your brief opening statements. Just tell us a little bit about what you're doing to tackle insecurity in your state.
Thank you. I'm not supposed to be here. It's Governor Zulum
Yes.
of Borno State, because I think the NESG believes that with his experience in managing the Boko Haram insurgency, he has a lot to share. All I can share is our experience in Kaduna State.
Yes.
What we have in Kaduna State is not Boko Haram insurgency until recently. I will explain that later. But we have been afflicted by what began as cattle rustling and over time evolved into kidnapping for ransom. This is what is referred to as banditry. But what we have seen in the last 6 months is a merger between the bandits and remnants of Boko Haram that were chased out of the northeast by ISWAP. So now they work together. Boko Haram and the bandits work together to kidnap for ransom, to raise money to enhance their operations. So today, at least in Kaduna, Katsina and Zamfara states, there is very little difference between what you call banditry and insurgency or terrorism. So I agree with what Governor Akeredolu was saying. I think labels should look at outcomes rather than, classifications. If you want to do classifications, you can say banditry is different from terrorism, but the end result is that people die, property is destroyed, normal lives are disrupted. So I think as a country, we should take the view that any organization, any group of people that threaten the security, sovereignty, and peaceful coexistence of Nigeria is a terrorist organization and will be attacked as such. Because the result is the same. The classifications are technical for security experts, but as far as I'm concerned, as governor of Kaduna State, anyone that is killed, whether by a bandit or an insurgent, is the same pain, is the same problem to me. So it really does not matter, and I think as a country we should stop this debate about the lines in between and just consider them as enemies of state and go after them and just wipe them out. What we are doing in Kaduna State is recognizing 3 realities. The first is that criminality evolves. When we first came into office, the biggest problem we confronted was cattle rustling, and we addressed it. But the people that were stealing cattle now started stealing human beings. So security problems evolve. They don't disappear. They just move from one form to another. Secondly, though governors are called state security officers, chief security officers of a state, anyone that has been governor knows that it is just a title, a constitutional title. But in reality, we do not have direct control over coercive instruments of state. We neither control the armed forces, nor the police, nor civil defense, or any form of coercive instrument. So we rely on federal security assets, to enforce the law, to provide intelligence and counterintelligence, as well as execute any operations. And the extent to which a governor can get his divisional commander or garrison commander to do his bidding, or his police commissioner to do his bidding, is quite limited. And I think everyone should understand that. So those that, hold governors responsible for security are not being very fair, because the truth is, as much as we want our states to be secure, we do not have the instruments to secure our states unless the federal government cooperates. And the third fact, reality is that the country is under-policed, is under-armed, is under-aired, or whatever you want to say. We don't have enough policemen, we don't have enough soldiers and officers, ground troops, we don't have enough air force, we don't have enough navy. The total size of the Nigerian armed forces, all the three armed forces and everything, is less than 200,000. The police is what, about 300,000, and some of them are engaged in non-police activities. So this, you are talking of about 500,000 people, 500,000 armed, maybe 600,000 if you add civil defense and customs, 600, 700,000 armed personnel to secure a country of over 210 million people. It's absurd. We need 3 times that number. When I was elected governor of Kaduna State, we had 13,000 policemen. Today, we have 11,000. And Kaduna State is 46,000 square kilometers. It's 5.5 times the size of the capital territory. It's 2.5 times the 5 states of the southeast put together, 2.5 times. You cannot have 11,000 policemen covering that. The footprint is too thin, and this is the reality. So, what have the governors been doing? Some of the governors of the Northwest, plus Niger, Plateau, and Nasarawa, came together. We call ourselves the frontline states because we are the states most afflicted by banditry in particular, came together and decided that we will hire, vet, train, and arm 3,000 vigilantes, indigenous to each of our states. So between 8 states, we can raise 24,000 that we will have trained by the police and the army. We buy them weapons, okay, from our budgets, not federal budget. Provide those weapons to them to work with the army, the police, with air cover to attack these bandits. This is the operation that started about 2 months ago in Zamfara and Katsina. It's going on right now in Kaduna and Niger, but it is being supported. It's being funded by the state governments, and it's being supported with our local vigilantes and hunters that know the terrain, working with the armed forces on the ground, with the Nigerian Air Force providing air cover. And I must say that in the last 3 weeks since the operation started, at least in Kaduna State, there has been significant degradation of the bandits. Every day I receive reports, scores of them are getting killed, and so on and so forth. The attempt to put a dynamite on the rail line of the Kaduna-Abuja rail is just one desperate effort to get headlines. But the night before, they tried to attack the same rail line, and about 10 of them were killed by the army. So we got the intelligence that they were going to target the rail line, and we got troops there, and they killed about 10 of them. But the following day, they came back and stuck a dynamite. So they are being degraded. They are being wiped out. The problem is that the number of officers, men, and resources we have of the armed forces, the police, is just overstretched.
Okay.
And it is taking time to deal with this problem, but I'm happy now with the simultaneous operations across 3-4 states of the Northwest and North Central. we are beginning to see the end of banditry as we know it. But Boko Haram is coming, Boko Haram is emerging, because the Abuja-Kaduna train attack was done by Boko Haram. It's a branch of Boko Haram called Darus Salam that 2 days ago claimed responsibility. We know about them, and the security agencies are on their track.
Thank you very much. I think now is a great time to bring in the security perspective. So, Mr. Bala, I know you said I shouldn't call you General. Maybe you can give us a little bit of can you give us some insights into how the federal security forces are thinking about these security problems, and what are the challenges that they face in tackling all these issues?
Thank you very much, Amaka. Am I heard?
Yes.
Yes. I would like first to establish a truism that actually the quality of peace and stability of any nation is dependent on the quality of its politics and its governance. Right. The military, the defense, the security, and the whole of the criminal justice system are instruments that instrumentalize politics and governance to deliver on peace and stability. So when this question comes, it simply follows the mentality that we are of a military generation. Any Nigerian that is from age 70 downwards grew up in a military environment, so seems to think that the military is governance. And where there are conflicts, like we are in war, like I would say it, the question is always like you have asked, what is the military doing? But it is not the military, because generals are taught to receive political directives by which they translate them into military strategies and into operational and tactical procedures. So we need to understand that. And I will digress a little for us to understand that force generation to deal with threats is not a factor of population. It is a factor of the threat, and I'm glad this forum is the Nigeria Economic Summit, that it is actually a factor of the threat and the economy of the nation. Can Nigeria stand a 500,000 people army where to dress up one infantryman for counterinsurgency is nothing less than $20,000? And if you need a battalion of 750 men, I'm just talking about uniforms, I'm not talking about arms, ammunition, and an MRAP, a mine-resistant anti-personnel, which even Proforce, for one unit, they have a contract with Niger, is at $500,000. So we should be relating war to economy. Not to digress so much, but to understand that when the military does the translation to a military strategy, it needs consistently for the political class to continue to direct it on how to fight this war. But when you have a political directive that sounds like technically defeat and dismantle, it only speaks about the kinetic effort to war. It doesn't talk about the four streams of national power, which is the diplomatic, the informational, the military, and the economic. Because when you fight a war, it has to be in these four streams. And I want to tell this crowd that the military constitutes only 25% of a war effort. Because the military is simply supposed to provide for that sanctified environment for these other three streams, and even if you translate them into local fashions of functions, that they are at the primacy of war. That is why you have the Northeast Development Commission.
Yeah.
But you hardly hear or see it. That's why in the informational, which is actually supposed to be civil, you don't quite hear it.
Right.
That is why it took us, last one. That is why it took us to drive ourselves into the purchase of the Super Tucanos, which are of no use to us because we can't apply them over a definition of what is terrorism and what is banditry and what is counterinsurgency.
It sounds like what you're also alluding to is the necessity for policing rather than over-militarization of the problem. It sounds
Absolutely.
like, yeah. So we'll come back to this, but let me go to Mr. Anyanwu, who is the country director for Messico here in Nigeria. Can you tell us a little bit, again, try to keep it brief, tell us a little bit about what is Messico doing to mitigate some of the drivers of insecurity that Patrick laid out in his opening and that we've been talking about?
Okay, thank you, Amaka. I'd say from an INGO perspective, an organization like Mercy Corps that's working in 40 countries around the world in a fragile context, we're constantly asking ourselves the question, how can we not only help those who have been riven by conflict, but how do we look at the underlying drivers? Whether we're talking about corruption, insecurity, injustice, marginalization, all the issues that make people go into violence and conflict. And we're also always asking ourselves, what approaches work? There are a couple of different approaches out there, whether you're looking at hard security or peace building or diplomacy. But from Mercy Corps' perspective, we try to focus on what we can do at the community level. We also work at the state level, and we also consider the national level as well to address the issues of violence and conflict. And so there's a number of different arguments that you can make, but the way we see it, in order to mitigate against conflict and violence, you have to combine development with peace building. Okay, I think that's really the approach to addressing the underlying causes of conflict. And there are a number of arguments that you can make. I just want to share with you just one, just from the economic perspective. So from our research at Mercy Corps in 2015, we did a study where we found that Nigeria stands to gain up to $13.7 billion annually in total macroeconomic progress in a scenario where you have peace in the north central, the middle belt states of Benue, Kaduna, Nasarawa, and Plateau alone. Okay, these gains represent up to 2.79% of Nigeria's GDP. So it's just an example of where you have development and you have peace, and how there can be gains. And that's our approach at Mercy Corps, using a market systems development approach as we look to assist those who have been riven by conflict. And we're working with the private sector with our programs to do this as well.
Okay, great, thank you. So I think both of the governors alluded to this reality that the governors don't have control over security in the states. And I want to get to that. But first, I want to talk a little bit about something that I think the governors do have control over, right? Which is, I think you both alluded to the farmer-herder conflicts, which at the core of it, we know, is often a couple things. One is cattle trespassing, right? Sometimes reprisal attacks, which is essentially assault. Those are state crimes. Those are state offenses, right? That is under the jurisdiction of states to prosecute. And the injustice around some of these things is often a driver of conflict. Why aren't states, well, maybe you are, why aren't states taking a more aggressive posture in prosecuting these crimes specifically? Maybe I'll start with you. Prosecuting when there is a crime. I'm not saying like, just catching any herder, but prosecuting like individual crimes that have happened in order to create a broader sense of justice.
Thank you. In my introductory remarks, I made an issue about our justice system.
Okay.
That is that the root of a number of cases that you claim that have failed to be prosecuted, a justice system. Now, I agree with you. You have trespass, criminal trespass on other people's land or farms. It falls within the purview of matters that can be resolved or should be treated by the state, no doubt. But if all you had, or we had before now, before we had Amotekun, all we had was a police system that will have to be the ones to arrest and are not prepared to arrest. So what do? They are faced with a fait accompli. There's nothing you can do as a governor. You have a police system that is not prepared to make an arrest. But things are changing, and they have really changed in Ondo State. That's where I can talk about. Because today, if you trespass on other people's farm, we will go after you and you'll be arrested. Okay. The Amotekun will arrest you. Nobody is going to stop it. 1. 2, it's either we have had several cases, and those who have trespassed, the herders, have been paying the farmers compensation. They prefer to pay compensation, and when they fail, they are in court. We will prosecute them. So there is no, it's the only way you can send the very important signal to people. Because at the end of the day, when you commit a crime, no matter how less the crime might be, and the hands of the law is unable to catch up with you, other people will repeat it. Right. People will take liberty. Now look, the other man had all the crops, what happened? But today, but today, for me, at least in my state, things have improved. Everybody have come to appreciate the fact that the Amotekun itself, appreciating Amotekun is the beginning of wisdom. Because if you don't, Amotekun will go after you anytime. So this is where we are now in Ondo State. I can talk about my state. Right. But I can assure you that where you don't have effective police system, there is little or nothing a governor can do. The governor will not on his own or carry his orderlies and go and arrest people. It's not possible. So, and if we are taken to court, if it's what we have observed in criminal trials, and it's taking too long. No matter what type of trial is it is. Okay. When criminal trial takes too long, then everything is defeated.
Let me let Governor El-Rufai come in here. How are you prosecuting these offenses in your state aggressively, and are you finding that it is helping alleviate conflict by creating a greater sense of justice?
Honestly?
Yes, honestly.
We don't have much faith in the justice system. It's too slow, it's too inefficient, it's too corrupt. As pointed out by the governor of Ondo State, the police is overstretched, is untrained, is too thin on the ground. There are all the issues that afflict virtually every public service organization in Nigeria: poor pay, corruption, incentives. They are all there. Okay, so I think this is the first thing that we need to look at if we want to address security issues. And I think General Bala has observed correctly, we must not be relying on the military for this situation. It should be the police. The police is the first line of law enforcement. If we have an effective policing system, we don't need the EFCC, we don't need the ICPC, we don't need road safety, we don't need civil defense. We need one solid police system. We used to have that, and we can still have that. I think that's the first thing we need to do. But what are we doing in Kaduna State? We need to go back to history and find out why things used to work. Okay? When I was a child, farmers and herders were partners. Okay? Farmers needed the herders to use for their cows to graze and dump their manure, because at that time fertilizer was not that common. It was the manure from the herders that provided the fertilizer for the farmers. So it was a partnership. During the dry season, they allow you to graze, and your animals leave the droppings, and that becomes the fertilizer for the next farming season. During the farming season, the herdsmen take out all their livestock and keep them in one place because there is grass all over. This is how it used to work, okay? Now, in those days, when the British came here and saw that system already working, at least in northern Nigeria, they mapped out the entire country into three. Some pieces of land were set aside as grazing reserves. Those places were set aside, acquired, paid for by the British colonialists. They acquired the land from the local communities and set that aside as grazing reserves. For instance, in Kaduna State, I think we have 14 or 17, I don't remember exactly, grazing reserves, already acquired, and we know the coordinates, we know that they are government land, grazing reserves. Between the grazing reserves, they establish what they call stock routes. These stock routes are the routes that livestock pass through, going from place to place, and this extends down across the River Niger into southern Nigeria. Because during the dry season, these are the places that they go to looking for grass. And when the rains come back, the same cattle take the same stock routes back. In addition, there is a third class called international stock routes. These are stock routes that extend to the rest of West Africa, up to Ghana. Okay? This is the basis for the ECOWAS Transhumance Protocol that allows these herdsmen to come into Nigeria with their cattle. Okay? Now, this system worked, at least under the old northern region, it worked very well. And in every location, whenever there is any conflict between a farmer and a herdsman, the local traditional ruler will be there to resolve the issues and compensate the farmer. Okay? Even then, farms were damaged by herdsmen.
Right, yeah.
But, if your farm is damaged, you don't pick your cutlass and kill the herdsman, you report to the nearest traditional ruler. They find out who passed through that farm. Because Fulanis move from place to place, but wherever they go, they refer to the Ardo, the leader of the Fulanis there, and say, I'm here, I'm moving to the next village. So it's easy to identify that person. The traditional rulers did this very well before the British came, and even during the colonial rule, because they were still in charge under indirect rule. So this was the system. So there was very little violence then. What has happened over the years is population growth and urbanization, and greed by political leaders, particularly military leaders at the time, took the grazing reserves and allocated to their friends. Yeah. So some of the grazing reserves have been lost. Some of the stock routes have been lost to farmlands, to urbanization. For instance, believe it or not, the villa is on an international stock route. Okay? Abuja itself is a stock route. Okay? So, because urbanization and urban development, population growth have taken over some of these grazing lands, they are not all available.
Right.
But in my state, for instance, except two, virtually all the grazing lands are available, and we're in the process of gazetting them and investing to convert them into ranches. Most of the stock routes are gone, okay, particularly in my state. Most of the stock routes are gone. They have become farmlands and roads and so on. So there is still conflict, okay? But what we are trying to do in Kaduna State is to bring back that traditional system, get the traditional rulers more involved, get in each chiefdom and emirate ROs to be in the traditional council, so that they serve to intermediate between the farmers and the herdsmen when there is conflict. Because the police is too far away from the problem. The governor is far removed from the problem to stop it. And the moment a farmer and herdsman clash, particularly in Kaduna, if the farmer is Christian and the herdsman is Muslim, it becomes a communal clash. It becomes something else completely.
Can I pick up on this? So I want to pick up on this, and we'll get to you. But I want to pick up on this on something Governor Akeredolu was saying earlier, which is, okay, so we all know that nomadic pastoralism is a practice all over the world, right? It's not unique to Nigeria. And for a lot of people who are nomadic pastoralists, it's a lifelong, centuries-old practice. It takes time to transition. If you're talking about all these grazing reserves that were settled, right? Some of it by politicians. If, as Governor Akeredolu is saying, we are able to actually prosecute when there is a crime, right? When there is damage to property or when there is cattle trespassing, and bring justice to farmers in that way, then do we need new laws like a bans on open grazing at this moment without or is it helping? I mean, maybe you can tell me what additional value is it bringing if you can already prosecute the things that are illegal, the crimes that are illegal. Cattle trespassing is illegal, damage to property is illegal, right? And we know that there's a certain way of life for a whole category of people in Nigeria who are Nigerians who do open grazing. So what additional value is that, open ban, what additional value is it bringing? Maybe you can help, do we need it, really?
Well, speaking for those of us who have put in place anti-open grazing laws, we have our reasons for doing it. And we have no apologies whatsoever. Now, it's been made clear, even here from what my brother has said, grazing route to where? From where to where? It's not going to work. And it's not working. Yes, maybe this route, there are things you have in the past. Don't let us imagine it now. We have said here now that even Abuja itself, as my brother has put it, is a top. So, and even the Aso Rock. Can anybody wake up one day and say, we will now take cows to Aso Rock to feed? We have passed that stage. Time changes, and we all must be prepared to change with time. Things have passed. What I'm trying to get at is this. No, you see, when you talk about grazing, in which all of us, there's this symbiotic work between farmers and others. All of you live together in peace. It's always been that. That time, the others will go only with their sander. I don't know, I think that's what they call it in national language. That won't stick. So when you now have to have your ads and you need AK-47 to move with them, that is no longer grazing. It's something else, it's an assault. And even the weapon itself shows us that you want to assault some people. Okay. And that's why we said we must work. Okay. And that this anti-open grazing, we are going to ban open grazing. Okay. And I think we are doing it effectively in Ondo State.
Thank you very much. We understand the perspective. So let me get back to General Bala. We talked about state police, or at least Amotekun in the southwest and vigilantes in Kaduna. From a security perspective, and I will also get the governor's perspective on this, what are some of the concerns, right? What are some of the potential issues, or how do we properly structure and regulate this state-level structure so that it doesn't become another security problem in the future, right? What's your...
Since I've been growing up and became someone who understands the workings of governance, I've always appreciated that policing must be devolved. Because, in fact, I grew up in my teenage to know that there was a native authority police, and it was very much within the family law structure. But in the good sense of whoever came up and decided that the native authority policing should not work and it should be federalized, I think from there lies the problem. So in my debate and argument and conversations constantly about devolving policing, I saw a point, like I have mentioned earlier, that peace and stability is actually the value of the quality of the politics and the governance of any society. And it is very much from these sectors, it is how much deep thinking, collaborative, and consensus building elites actually work within the political and governance structures of any nation. when these issues of Hizbah, Amotekun, Abu Beagu, and whatever kind of contrivance comes up, by the philosophy, I respected it. But I think where the political class is actually missing the point is not doing deep thinking with respect to my political masters, because I still remain a general and a soldier. But it is very important that we uplift our politics beyond emotionalizing. Because very much all these kinds of contraptions of security organizations we are building are ethnically and religiously fed. And this doesn't bring together a nation that is ethnically and culturally diverse as Nigeria. I'll quickly step aside without blowing my trumpet. I went to the best war college in the world, which is the National War College, Washington, D.C. I went to the same school as Colin Powell, the late Colin Powell. We have an American study tour, which is a 6-unit course of the master's program. And we went to visit Pretoria in Georgia. Those who travel and know understand it. I went to a farm that was 203 years old at that time. The area of the farm was 33 kilometers. The old man tours it with his Cessna aircraft. He slaughters 100 heads of cattle every fortnight. For veal, he slaughters 75 every week. They are all in shelters and they are fed on the farm from the produce of his corn and pea and soybeans. If he tells you how much it costs to run that, and here we are, we came with a very emotional, political, ethnicized solution. And even the name, banning of open grazing. For us who understand, my first degree was in literature, so I do understand what words mean. How do you ban a culture? You can't ban a culture. Rather, you introduce a social system over time that will maturate for such to be done. In every sector of, I know billionaires who import fertilizer. But 73% of the strategic protein supply of Nigeria comes from cattle. And if you want to ranch cattle and you provide the funds to the Fulanis today, forgive me, wallah, you will buy one cow for $1 million naira. And this is the conversation we need really to be very, very careful about. I will end up by saying this, that yes, Nigeria is in strife, but we should appreciate it with good education. Those of you who are economists must have read E.M. Bremner's J-curve. We are a young democracy, and the reality is a nation that comes out of conflict or is democratizing goes to a sharp slide. And it is not military or some contraptions of sectarian security structures that will bring you peace and stability. It is politics and governance. It is humanism. It is humanism. You have to build that because the whole concept of security is people-centric. So if you miss that, you miss governance, you miss politics.
Very important. So I want to follow up on that because I think we should talk about what are the political constraints that makes it so difficult for us in Nigeria now, especially on this issue, to have a more nuanced conversation that acknowledges that there are rights on both sides. I want to talk about that, right? How do we overcome some of those constraints? So we'll come back to that. But I want to bring in Mr. Anyanwu, right? I know that you guys, so we'll just diverge a little bit and we'll come back to this. I know that you worked on a report on how COVID-19 exacerbated a lot of the drivers of conflicts, right? Do you want to give us just, one or two very specific examples about what that looks like? right? How this might have exacerbated some of the distrust that is fueling a lot of these conflicts.
Yeah, thank you, Amaka. As you mentioned, this was a year-long analysis that Mercy Corps conducted on how COVID-19 has impacted conflict. We did this in Afghanistan, in Colombia, as well as Nigeria. So in Nigeria's case, well, I would say first off, we had the issue of the lockdown in 2020. The border closures, the movement restrictions that we saw in 2020, it really caused an increase, excuse me, in armed group activity. And so thereby worsening the perception of insecurity, and we're seeing the lingering effects of that today, the north, not only the Northeast, but also in the Northwest as well. When you look at the communities in the Northeast and in the Middle Belt where we're working, the informal markets, the structures, they were all hit hard by these lockdowns, which also caused economic effects as well. And of course, this armed group activity, it has also led to the banditry that we're seeing, the cattle rustling and the looting. And so these are all effects of what we saw during the pandemic with the lockdowns. I think the second area has to do with severe economic hardship that we're seeing, both in the rural and the urban areas. I think this was also an effect that we saw from the lockdowns in 2020. For example, we saw that food security almost doubled in 2020 with more than 10 million people who were food insecure. Also, unemployment and lost wages also has contributed to insecurity as well, with many people resorting to criminal activity, engaging in corruption, and this has all fueled violence and conflict as well. I think the third area has to do with social agitation, particularly amongst youths in the country. We saw during the pandemic and afterwards a growing activism, especially among youths through mass mobilizations and advocacy. We saw what happened with the NSARS protests as well. And again, it's really important, as we look at the pandemic recovery, to center development around youths and making sure that youths have jobs and employment. I think the last area we saw in terms of effects was an increase in gender-based violence as well.
Great, thank you. So let's come back to this issue about politicization, and then we'll move on to a question about service delivery, and then hopefully take some questions. Why, maybe I'll bring in Governor El-Rufai here and Governor Akeredolu, or you can step in if you like. Why is it so difficult in our conversation to acknowledge that, farmers have rights, of course, to their land and to their property, which is why I was asking about prosecuting those crimes. But at the same time, that herders also have a right to movement and to a way of life. And of course, people often say, well, you understand there's a lot of distrust of the elites because it's really the elites that own the cow, and they are the ones that are perpetrating this system, and that's probably true. What do we need to do, right, to have a more, middle ground balanced conversation that, in my view, might help to mitigate some of the mistrust, right, on both sides? Is it, what you're thinking about? What do we need to do? Do we need more people or the political elites to speak up? Do we need more people in the private sector do we need more research into, how many elites are actually, giving people cattle? What do we need to do to make this hopefully a more balanced conversation? Or what are the obstacles to doing that, in your view? Anybody who wants to chime in? And if nobody, then we can move on. I'll let you.
I will take. Well, I think in the short term, we have to find ways to mitigate these farmer-herder conflicts. They will continue, but as I said, if we make use of the traditional institutions more actively and map the movement of the livestock and know better the points of conflict. As I said, most of the conflicts arise because stock routes have become farmlands. So if you can identify those as potential sources of conflict and put in measures to resolve these issues, that's what you can do in the short term. Because as pointed out by one of the panelists, this nomadic grazing is a habit, it's a way of life, it's a culture. It will not disappear overnight, no matter what you legislate. You are also right, as a lawyer, to point out that there is no need for any new legislation because there are adequate laws of tort and the criminal law to take care of any issue that will arise between a farmer and herdsman. But it is largely politics, populist politics, that is driving the open grazing ban rather than reality. So in the short term, that's what I think we should do, particularly in places like my state where this is common. Secondly, in the medium to long term, I think we must come up with a very clear roadmap to sedentarize all nomadic herdsmen. We must sedentarize all of them.
But how long do you think that would take?
It can take 100 years. It doesn't matter, but let's start, okay? In Kaduna, we have 14 grazing reserves. We are investing about, between us and our partners, ALA of Denmark, we're investing about 12 billion naira with the support of the central bank to settle 1,500 herdsmen families, okay? Now, if we're able to do that, with the support of Allah, the place will be equipped. It will have primary school, primary health center, vet clinics, milk collection centers, beef processing facility. We don't want to be sending live cows to Lagos. Right. We'll slaughter them, freeze them, charge a premium, and send it to Lagos and collect their money. So, but that's 12 billion in one grazing reserve. I have 14 or 17. Now, if we begin as state governments, along with the private sector, begin to build these ranches and sedentarize these herdsmen, over time we'll solve the problem. I am going to start. I live in 1.5 years, but my hope is that the governor after me will continue, and one day it will be a thing of the past, because my great-grandfather was a herdsman, but I am not, because my grandfather sedentarized. So this is the life cycle we see as a roadmap for all the nomadic herdsmen. That's the solution, in my view.
Can I ask one quick follow-up, and then in either one, which is, so do we need to put pressure? Because a lot of the retort, right, in the public discourse is often, well, it's the elites who are often giving cows to herders, and those elites can afford to buy land. I don't know, should we, is there research behind that, or should we be putting pressure on whichever elites own land not to give land to herders? Should that be a part of the solution?
Look, there is enough land, at least in the northern states. I know there is enough land that you can set aside for grazing and ranching, okay? You see, the point that General Saleh Bala was making is that ranching is going to be expensive. It's going to triple the price of beef in Nigeria. Nigerians have been eating beef for almost next to nothing because of the way we produce beef, because of open grazing, okay? If we go into ranching with all the investment and infrastructure and cost of funds and so on, beef is going to triple in price. It's going to be expensive. And you need a lot of investment to be able to make that a viable proposition. The reason why the elites that own a lot of cattle will not go into ranching now is because they cannot compete with the itinerant herdsmen. When they fatten a bull, they put it in the market, it cannot compete in price with the one that eats grass for free.
Okay.
This is
So
what
it
many
needs to be
Nigerians do not
simultaneous.
realize, that we are getting a good deal, getting protein for next to nothing because of this system of grazing. The moment we modernize, and I think we should, we must,
We must.
because the security problems caused by the nomadic herdsmen is too much.
Okay.
It
Okay.
keeps me awake at night.
I
So
wanna-
let's end it, but let's remember that we'll be buying beef at 3-4 times the price today.
And let's also remember, I think that it will take time.
It will
right?
take time.
That it's not something that
Look,
will happen overnight.
In
But
my
let
view,
me come to
it will
Governor.
take a generation. It will
Yeah.
take 30 years. That's
So
what
let's
it
come
takes.
to Governor Akeredolu, please.
Thank you.
I know you've been
I appreciate my colleagues, their line of discussion about whether you are banning a culture or not. Pastoral nomadism is not a new thing. The culture we are referring to here today never resided only in Africa. There were nomadic farmers all over the world. And it's not taking them this time you want to give us to end it. The moment we are determined that what is good for these Fulani herdsmen is for them to be sedentary and work at it, the earlier we do it, the better for them. We should not look. Many of us here. Today I don't have any ads, but I know of people high-ranking who have ranches in Nigeria today. High-ranking, they can showcase their cows, but those cows are resident. They don't move. Those cows are in a farm. So why are you pushing these poor people out? Even the vagaries of life that they face, whether it's snake bite, whether it's attack on the road, their children not going to school, why are you pushing it and saying it's a culture? It's a culture that must be discouraged in the interest of those who are involved. And that's my own position. And the earlier we start, the better. Let cow, let beef, let it eat the rooftop. It will come down. Let it eat the rooftop. It will come down. Because if today, because of we want to eat beef, so people be killing themselves, and it's because we don't want to ban the culture. People are killing themselves. We have laws. Mr. President has said it. Anybody with AK-47 should be arrested. How many have been arrested? And they are still carrying it. It is no longer issue of your cattle. You are moving pastoral nomad. You are a nomadic pastor man. It's not the issue again. It's that let us be fair to ourselves.
Okay.
I have always said something. Sorry, 1 minute. That cattle rearers, they hardly will find time to be involved in crime as kidnapped for ransom because they are busy with their heads. But you know that most of them, they sell this and don't return money. They don't want to go back to the owners of the cattle. Then they now get involved in crime. The earlier the owners find a farm to settle their cattle and not send these poor men on the road and say it's a culture, the better for all of us. That's where we stand.
So I want to switch gears a little bit, and I want to talk about another thing that is a driver of a lot of these conflicts, which is just the lack of service delivery. You know, we've been talking about it throughout the day. You know, Nigerians provide their own electricity. Nigerians sometimes have to build their own roads. Nigerians provide their own water. All of that fuels distrust in the state, which is a part of what causes people to do reprisal attacks instead of waiting for. And you talked about you don't trust the justice system. If you don't trust the justice system, ordinary Nigerians can't, right? So my question is, and then I'll bring you. My question is for the governors. With a lot of what you need to do, you know, some of these issues are primary responsibilities for local governments and states: healthcare, education. And we know that a big challenge is revenue, right? In order to invest in these things. What are you doing? What is your plan in your state to raise the revenue required to make investments in critical healthcare and education. Sure, we can leave infrastructure to the federal government, but those things that will make Nigerians feel like they're getting something from government, right? And in the context that we all know, there are already, revenue heads that are in the exclusive authority of states, right? Like personal income taxes. You talked earlier about property taxes being for local government. So, what are you doing to raise that revenue to tackle some of these problems? And then I'll bring the other two in as well. You want to start?
Well, you are right. Most of the key responsibilities in our constitution that have to do with the day-to-day lives of ordinary citizens are vested in state governments and local governments. For instance, primary education, which is the most important foundation for education, is the responsibility of local governments. The same with primary health care. And under the supervision of the state governments, the local governments are supposed to deliver on this. And in many states, indeed, we have taken control of primary education under universal basic education boards and primary health care by bringing it under one roof, under the control of the state governments. And based on the revenue lines that we are assured of today, which is federation account, value-added tax, and so on, I believe that most states can deliver on those, because in Kaduna State, we've been doing that. In the last 6 years since we've been in government, we've budgeted at least 40% every year of our annual budget on health and education. So we've met all the minimum standards of United Nations and so on regarding investment in health and education, and we're doing that. And it can be done. And many states have done it. I know a time under Governor Mimico, his predecessor in office, when Ondo State nearly achieved universal health coverage because of his focus on primary health care. So it is possible. It's not, you don't even need to raise new revenues to be able to provide good quality education and decent primary health care. You don't need much investment to be able to provide health insurance, for instance, because the universal basic health fund from the federal government comes in to assist you, and when you match that, every state would be able to provide health insurance, for instance, and we're doing that in Kaduna State. The problem, I think, with investments in health and education for politicians with a 4-year life cycle or 8 years is that these are investments that take 30 years to show results. So it may not be politically expedient or politically profitable to invest in those. So many politicians with a short-term vision of what is popular would rather build roads and bridges that people can see and clap for them than clean up education and healthcare. And what are the problems in education and healthcare? In our experience in Kaduna, and I think it's the same in every state, the main problem with primary education is teacher quality. Most of the teachers are unqualified. Some were political thugs that were given jobs by the previous government. And you just have to stand and clean them out and bring qualified teachers. We did that in Kaduna. We sacked 22,000 teachers and hired 25,000 new ones for our primary schools. So it's possible. We did it. We were told we'll lose re-election. We didn't. We won re-election. So it's possible to do it. Now, again, with primary health care, the key problem is to have enough doctors, enough nurses, and enough midwives in all your primary health centers so that you can provide free antenatal care. That way, your infant mortality and morbidity will go down. All your numbers will begin to show improvement. And it's possible to do this. And as I said, the state governments, working with the local governments can deliver on this. Okay. Do we need more revenues? Of course. You always need more money. And there are many ways to raise revenues, and many states, Kaduna, Edo, Lagos, have shown that states can actually raise revenues independent of federation account and be able to deliver even more services.
Great.
Thank you.
Governor Akeredolu, do you want to tell us a little bit about what's your plan to raise more revenue to invest in some of these services.
Thank you so much. What are our plans? I will say that when we came into office, our IGR was maximum about 700 million per month. It goes to nothing. 700. That was when we came into office. But today, we're averaging 2 billion, 2.5 billion. Because of, we made efforts, deliberate efforts to block a lot many of the loopholes. Deliberately, I don't know what gives rise to this. Let me use the word we, but we in parentheses, we politicians, because I don't know whether I'm one really, but we always give room for these loopholes. Because people believe that they are, I mean, you have all these other politicians who are not in government, that you hold them. So at the end of the day, they become leeches on the finances of the state. That's what happens. And it has become something that is a strange thing, but it's a strange norm that politicians will think that they must get this, they must get that, they must get that. So what will be left to take care of the interests of the people? So we found out that we had to block all these loopholes, and we have started generating income in so many other areas that was not being used, like the hotel, the consumption tax. I remember when we came in, as much as we have Okada in so many, I don't know, in thousands, they were bringing Okigbo. Today, we are getting money from Okada. Yes, we are doing that because you just come in, you write Messico and just pick people and you don't bother. So we are generating money from that. And a lot is coming in from what I will call deliberate effort by government to make sure that we have ICT.
Do you have what?
ICT, run by the information technology. Now, because at the end of the day, we have what they call card BIO. We met it on ground, but we have to improve on it. That is citizenship card for the state. So everybody must key in so that to enjoy the health insurance, you must show your card. To take advantage of educational
your
opportunity.
tax card?
Yes.
Okay.
Not a tax card,
so personal,
but the citizen's card. Yes.
So that will help with collecting personal income taxes.
Tax.
That's it.
And everything.
Go.
It goes a long way to assist us, and this is assisting us greatly.
Yeah.
But one thing that is so sure is that I agree that we cannot continue to rely on federal allocation. But we must point out, federal government itself cannot continue to hold on to the amount of money they are holding on to. They cannot. The state, you must devolve more money to the state. The state needs money to run all these businesses. I'm happy that the Minister of Finance is here with us, and all of us are here to discuss, is that federal government has too much money. And you are borrowing at large. We want to borrow, if we want to borrow now, it will come to so many offices here, and debt management office, DMO, everybody is here. They will tell you not to borrow, you can't pay. You are borrowing, you can't pay. Nobody is worried about you. So we need money to develop the state. Let us borrow as you can borrow. We will pay at the end of the day.
Okay.
If it's going to be from World Bank, if it's a grant or anything, we know those who have fought and won their World Bank battle, and others who lost that World Bank battle today are not there again. So with the World Bank battle, it's important for us to fight it so that it can assist the state. We will continue to do it. Thank you.
Thank you. Let me bring in Mr. Anyanwu and General Saleh. So I'll start with you, Mr. Anyanwu, because a lot of what your organization ends up doing is providing these services that the state is not providing, right? So what's your viewpoint? I guess, what are you seeing, right? In give us some perspectives on how some of these issues are driving conflicts and I know you also do some work with, tackling mistrust. Maybe if you can give us some examples of how better service delivery has helped mitigate conflict in some instances, that would be great.
Yeah, thank you, Amaka. Well, first off, we're not trying to replace the role of government, but I think one thing is for sure, when it comes to scarcity, scarcity drives conflict in almost every situation. And maybe I'll just share a few examples of how we've seen maybe the inadequate services of government and how that has contributed to conflict in Nigeria. I think it was mentioned earlier, we talked about the farmer-herder crisis. I would say the competition and the conflicts, this is about limited resources. And this is one of the reasons why we're seeing conflict. For example, access to water. Both farmers and herders, they need access to water. So these are issues of access and control. So that's one example. We also talked about the breakdown of trust between government and the citizenry, to deliver services. It's important that people have trust in government. If there's no trust, then there will be no social cohesion. So I think that's also a major factor as well. But one thing that we're doing to mitigate all of this at Mercy Corps, again, is that focus on development as well. We believe that, for instance, engaging youths in meaningful economic activities will reduce, the chances of them engaging in conflict and violent activities. So maybe just to share a few things about what we're doing, in the Northeast, we're supporting over 10 private sector companies to provide services, to impact about 400,000 youth across the states of Borno, Adamawa, and Yobe states. We're working to increase employment opportunities for young people, working to increase their income levels, and to increase their access to financial services as well, and good agricultural products. So, that's our way of, mitigating the violence and the conflicts and creating more opportunities to kind of reduce the scarcity.
Great, thank you. And General Saleh, from the security services perspective, what do you think needs to be done, right? And whether it's military or police, to rebuild trust with communities, right? To help mitigate, again, like I said earlier, a lot of the reprisal attacks, if you trusted that the services would actually arrest the people and prosecute them, maybe you'd have less reprisal attacks, right?
Okay.
So what's your perspective? What do we need to do from the security perspective, not necessarily the government, to rebuild some of this trust?
Well, I left the military like 8 years ago, so I will not speak for them, but I will speak rather generally on really what Nigeria needs to do. And I'm simply going to rehash my opening. That for peace and stability to be achieved in Nigeria, the level of quality of leadership is very germane. It is important that our politics, our politicians and politicking needs to be improved. Because honestly, politics and politicians are the driver of the peace development and progression of any nation. And for professionals like us, that is why my brother, as much as I have my debates with him, we have never sat down to debate, confessed that 2 weeks ago that his effort at transforming education in Kaduna almost cost him the elections. But he did it, and he won the elections, and I was shamed. And it is important that he's in Kaduna and things are happening. I think our politicians should grow above ethnicity and primordial elitist sentiments, because that is where the conflict, to which, because we have a military mentality, you know the problem that Islam has, I'm a Muslim, a practicing one, is the Sharia, because we always emphasize on had, which is punishment. So this is the problem of militarization of a society. we don't look at human streams of dealing with problems. You have Amotekun, you have Abubeagu, you have Hisba, but you are not dealing with the social issues. You are not. That's the basis. When you talk about sustainable development, I'm sure in this crowd there are people in development. I think the military or law enforcement is distance away from the conversations. It is about wealth. It is about schools. It is about midwives. It's non-existent. Nobody talks about this. We are so emotive about certain people from certain places shouldn't be in certain places, in spite swearing to a constitution. That is where the problem of security comes, because it is the problems we have are all about exclusion. Even Boko Haram, it's simply because of exclusion. They gave the federal government 7 demands, and the government didn't fulfill any. Apart from ransacking their enclave and chasing them away, that radicalized them into being extremist violent groups. The whole conversation about the Fulani herdsmen that is so politicized, it's a generation of issues. We never apply development, and you cannot sedentarize them. I'm sorry, my brother, Governor Rufai. You cannot sedentarize them because even the white people, I'm sorry, I'm not being racist, go there, they have an EU, European Union gypsy protection policy. The gypsies are allowed to roam. When you visit and you see trailer camps with facilities for toilets, they come from history. They come from routes of gypsies who are white people. Some of them are PhDs, they are professors. But every year, they embark on this roaming, and it is a culture. It is protected by the United Nations, and that's why you have peace in the gypsy society.
Right.
So we need to be, we all have big degrees. We all claim and we are proud of Harvard degrees, Cambridge, and so on and so forth. But we are not manifesting those intellects that we have gathered into governance. I mean, a professor sits down and he speaks worse than somebody who has never gone out of Shandam, my hometown. It doesn't make sense. And then that professor tomorrow becomes a governor. His mentality is Shandam. It doesn't make sense. Our children are global citizens. My children, they don't care to go to Shandam. They are here in Abuja. Their friends are students that went to school with them in Coventry, in Edinburgh. When I was in War College, we were from 73 nations, and those are their brothers and sisters. And here we are ethnicizing the security, the heart of the progression of our country. I think we, as elites, we should evolve from ethnic champions to global citizens. This is very important.
So this seems like a good place to pause and get some questions from the audience. It seems like, I think, yeah, do you want to very quickly, yes, please, just very quickly add, and then but we can always come back to you. Okay. Go ahead. It's not working? Oh. Can somebody help us here with the, okay.
Just one quick one. Now, here, we have heard about ethnicizing. Ethnicizing. Of what? Don't you have Fulanis? Don't you have Hausas? Don't you have Yorubas outside their enclaves? Or Igbos outside their enclaves who are making, who have decent life in different ethnicity? Don't you have them? As we always say, as anybody today said that Aliko Dangote should leave Lagos. Have we said it? Have you been to so many cities where you have settlements of Hausas and Fulanis in southwest, or where you have settlements of Igbo in the north, or where you have Yorubas in some part, even outside Nigeria? Who is after them? They are living a good life. Nobody is after them. It's not issue of ethnicizing anything. We are saying if you have a culture that is destructive of the means of livelihood for others, the governors have a right to protect their own people. And they will do it. But their means of livelihood. It did not start today. We have that judgment of Adewale Thompson since the 70s on destructive attitude about S-men. If that has not been enforced, some people must be in place to enforce it. It's not emotional. It's not an issue that has to do with emotion. It has nothing to do with ethnicity. It has to do with means of livelihood. Your own means of livelihood, you cannot use to destroy others. If there's a way you can do it and you won't be destructive, go ahead. If you want your people to be nomadic, go ahead. But we are saying that we will not allow that nomadism to destroy that sedentary farmers who are there. That's what we're saying.
Ultimately, and we'll open up, I mean, I think we can agree on this, that everybody should be allowed, that we should not tolerate the trampling of rights of anyone on either side, regardless of who it is. So we'll have to find a middle ground there. Okay, so where do I start? The gentleman in green has had his hand up visibly for a while, and then we'll come to the gentleman in white, and then we'll come over here. But please keep your question to a question and very short, and if it's not, I will cut you off.
Hello? All right, thank you so much. My name is Shiolobum, I'm a lawyer, and I would want to use this medium to react to the statement of the general. When you said that, sir, you said something about the fact that creating regional security outfits is capable of causing division in the country. When you said that, I was not happy at all. The truth is, let's tell ourselves the truth, the nation has always been divided, and everybody has a sense of regional and cultural identity. I'm from the Southwest, and at every particular point in time, I would always stand up and defend the rights of my people. I mean, the fact that the Southwestern governors created the Amotekwa outfit is extremely justified. And I want to commend Governor Rotimi Akeredolu. You spoke very well, sir.
What's your question, please?
Now,
what's the question?
Now,
Sorry.
it's just a clarion call for the North to go back and reflect. Most of all the problems we're having in the North, in the country states from the North, I did my law school in Kano. The level of illiteracy and poverty there is extremely nauseating. And that's actually the failure of leadership. I mean, the fact that we have banditry and terrorism is costing the nation a lot. It's costing the nation a lot.
What's the question? Okay, thank you.
So this calls for sober reflection. So the North should go back and reflect.
Can we move to the next question, please? Thank you very much. Thank you. The gentleman in white over here. Yeah.
Okay, thank you very much. My name is Franklin Ungu. I'm with Lagos Business School. I think from all we've been discussing, it's clear, I think it's something that we need to understand, that economic outcomes are determined by economic policies. And economic policies are determined by politics. And the politics are determined by the sociology of the people. The problem we have in Nigeria, which actually I beg the two governors that we have, Rotimi Akeredolu and Malame Rufai, is to clearly sit back and ask themselves, do we have the right structure of governance for the country? Until we have the appropriate structure of governance, there is no way we can move forward. That is why you find out that some people's culture affecting other people's culture. That's why there is no interest in the justice system. That is why the police is not properly. But if we have the right structure, particularly in terms of what they are saying, so the question I'm asking is, how do we create that structure whereby the states can have more powers to actually look into certain things? Last year, we had Madam Rufai in the panel, and he said that we need to restructure Nigeria to achieve better outcomes. The question then is, what extent have we gone? Interestingly, two of them are APC governors. The question is, what extent have we gone in terms of restructuring Nigeria to get a better outcome for the people?
Can I ask you one question to clarify your question?
Yes.
You want the states to have more power to do what exactly?
So
policing or revenue?
For instance, policing, justice system. So we need to look at the exclusive list that's controlled by the federal government and say, how many of them should we move to the concurrent list or controlled by the state government? Until we do that, this is 27th NESG summit. And it will continue. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So I'm going to take one more question, and then I'll merge that question, and we'll take that question. Let's take one more question.
Good evening, everyone. Very interesting conversation. I just want to look at the diversity of Nigeria. Nigeria is a very diverse society, about over 200 million people. And I don't think diversity is a weakness at all. How can we harness the strength of diversity? How can we address it? And, not to use this as a tool to divide Nigerians. How can we do that in terms of addressing issues like security? So that's just the first question, diversity. How can we look at diversity as a strength, not as a weakness, and addressing security? Thank you.
How can we leverage diversity to address our security issues? Okay, so we're going to take 2 questions from online, and then we'll take them all together with the panel.
Okay? The first one from Omoakola Kalen from the United Kingdom says, is there a lesson to be learned from the billionaire impact investor in other climes purchasing land for impact investing for food security and climate change mitigation? Are there business models that can unify the farmer and the herder around common objectives of profit and peace?
So are there business models that can
unify the farmer and the herder around common objectives of profit and peace?
Okay, next question.
And then the second one is, how do you ban a culture? Do we encourage pushing this narrative or look strategically and with deep concern at a communication process for understanding along with juxtaposing this said culture and then situate it within a legal framework?
Was the second question, how do we ban culture? Is that what you... But the second question was, how do we ban culture?
How do we ban a culture? It was a statement that was made.
Yeah, yes. Got it. Okay. So let me put it this, I'm going to ask you 2 groups of questions. So the first one on restructuring that was raised by Mr. Ungu. We've been talking about restructuring forever in Nigeria to the point that it's become unclear what we mean. But I think that there's one thing most people agree on is that we should have state police, right? I think there's less that we probably misstate the level of control states already have to collect revenue. So states can collect personal income taxes, they should do that. When it comes to restructuring and state police specifically, how close are we, since that seems to be a level of consensus, right? We already have Amotekun in the Southwest. What's the obstacle to actually making this a reality, right? So that will be the one question. What's the obstacle to making it a reality? How close are we, right? And I think we should be thinking about, well, how can it be funded, given all the revenue challenges that we're talking about? And then I think the second question, there are 2 questions that are very similar, which is how do we leverage diversity to address our insecurity issues, and are there business models that can address the interests of both the farmers and the herders? So we'll take the restructuring question first, and then we'll take that one. I think we can take it in the context of some of the issues that the governor was mentioning earlier in terms of the grazing reserves and trying to co-locate farms with grazing reserves. Maybe that's one model we can look at. But let's take the restructuring question first. Who wants to start?
Let me start on this issue of restructuring. Somebody said, both of us, that is Malam El-Rufai and I, are APC governors. And I can assure you, the little I know of us, we are proud APC governors. And we are moving nowhere. We are not nomadic. So we are very proud APC governors. But you need to go read our manifesto. The Apc Manifesto itself it makes the goal to be state. It says that state should be the center for democratic and economic development. That is our manifesto. But we are not people, at least speaking for myself, and I know Malam El-Rufai very well. He's not somebody that is able to talk tongue-in-cheek. We don't. Are we there yet? I believe is that we cannot have have everything centralized as we have now and think we will make a headway. And that is why the issue of restructuring must come in. He happened to have chaired our committee on restructuring. This was done about two years or almost 2.5 years ago. We have come up with details about how we believe this country should be restructured. And we believe in restructuring. It is APC promised it. Why has it dragged on for long, as you have asked? It's something that is inexplicable. It's not something we can defend. It's not something I'm going to defend. The time is getting too long. Now, the race now is about 2023. So, it's now, if you are not careful, it will be thrown to others and say, let those who come in 2023 come and restructure. That's what politicians do normally. But you can still do it now if you believe in it. This restructuring, one of the key areas that some of us hold on to is that we must have state police. There is no multi-level policing is important for us now as part of restructuring. We must devolve more things to the state. The fiscal policy has to be tinkered with. As I said, the money coming to federal government is too much. The state needs money to run in a number of programs. If state is the center of this economic development, if we are to be, then you must have a wherewithal to be center of economic development. But not that you remain beggarly and poor as many states are, and running to Abuja and say you are center of economic development, you will develop no economy. We only just become beggarly. So that's my view. So restructuring, as you have said, is a thing we should have embarked on for long.
Right.
Luckily, you have proposed amendment to constitution now.
Right.
A few things have been put into it, but I'm not too sure they are enough. Let us look at it again. It was Frank when he was making his presentation. Time has come. Let us have the consensus of the elites. Let us all sit down and agree on 1, 2, 3. We cannot agree on everything at the same time.
Right.
But those that are salient, agree on it and let's move. That's my own view. This country will need and we must restructure.
So let me just, before you take the same question, let me layer it a little bit, right? And say, you were talking about training vigilantes in Kaduna. The governor was talking about Amotekun. We effectively already have state-level police in some ways, right? So what will change, really? What will actually change? Is it more of a question of properly regulating and constitutionalizing what has become some sort of de facto practice? Or is there, do we think the security situation could get dramatically much better once there is an official force called state police beyond what you already have? So.
No. What we have, the vigilance services we have, whether you call it Amotoko or whatever, are not police. They are not recognized under the Police Act as police. They don't have the powers of the police. And they have to work under the police. Even the ones that we trained along with the hunters that are working against banditry have to work under the armed forces and the police. That's the difference. I honestly think that there is a lot we can do to improve the structure of Nigeria, but let me just warn that after 20 or 30 years in public service, I've come to recognize that there are no silver bullets. People that think restructuring will solve Nigeria's problems should understand that no, that's not it, okay? Restructuring will certainly reduce some of the imbalances in our federation, which was caused by 30 years of military rule. But even if we go back to the Republican Constitution of 1963, which gave a lot of power to the regions or the states, we will still have serious problems. And the most serious problem has been identified by General Saleh Bala, and we are not listening. The problem of Nigeria is the quality of its politics. Until and unless we bring better quality people to politics and public service, you can debate, you can have 270 NESGs, there will be no progress. Okay? And the people sitting here, those in the private sector, those in civil society, should understand that politics trumps everything. And until you guys stop all your, come down from your high horses and come and join us in politics and get better quality politicians, this country will not make progress. Okay? This is the most important lesson, I think, from this panel. It was made by a soldier.
Yeah.
It took us years for us to figure it out. Some of us thought we were technocrats. No, politics is dirty. Politics is the most important vocation in our lives. And Nigeria is in danger precisely because of the quality of politics that we have. You better come and we fix it. Thank you.
Thank you, thank you. So on that note, General Bala, and then also Mr. Anyanwu, you can jump in here. The question about can you ban culture, right? Let's take that. The question from online, can you ban culture? Okay, it was already something you had addressed. One of the questions from the online participants was, how do you ban culture, right? And I remember, I watched this movie from University of Colorado. It's called Kiss the Ground. And I was telling them about what Nigeria was doing about the livestock program. And the first thing she said was, pastoralists will never become ranchers. And I was like, this white lady in Colorado. So the middle ground between where you are and where the governor is saying, well, his grandfather was a herder and they're sedentarized. Certainly there can be some sedentarization, right, over time, I'm sure, right? So I guess the question, how do you take that question? Does it feel like that's what we're doing? We're just banning culture? Is there another way to think about it? Is there a middle ground between saying, right, sedentarization can happen, and you saying it can't happen? Because we have to modernize in some way.
Absolutely not. I never said that sedentarization is impossible. No. Culture is dynamic. We all learned this from sociology class 101. Culture is dynamic. It's anthropological. It is generational. And there are UN statutes that actually protect culture and people's ways of life. We must understand that. It is very, very important. No nation grows on politics of brinkmanship. It doesn't happen, it doesn't work. But then, it is important that through governance and politics, you are able to resource a culture's transformation. Just like I can walk into Nassau or CBN and get a loan to import tractors, if I am politically correct with my sister, and also import fertilizer and pretend to import seedlings. Audu Ogbe's grass policy should also be respected and recognized. And we should be able to, through a strategic plan, immediate, mid, and long term, provide for the transformation of pastoralism, not ban on pastoralism. Especially when we know in our heart of hearts that a culture that is steeped in ceremony understands that cow meat is so important. We should be able to find a process of accommodating and bringing the human face into transformation of that culture. But I quickly want to bite on restructuring. Okay. I love restructuring. I love it so much. As East Timor is successful, South Sudan is not. But I know also as I was growing up at the age of 5, one night in 1966, some people were killed. There was chaos. Someone came up and said there should be no more 4 regions, and it was restructured to 12. And someone who was wise came up another time and restructured and there was 24. And another wise guy came and restructured and there was 36. And another wise guy came. So many wise men are coming. And we are breaking into splinters. There are 774 local governments. And governance is not, the primacy of governance is not at the states. Ask the governors. The governors know where the primacy of governance is. It is at the local government. How well are the local governments where the people are? How are they energized? Our eye is all on Aso Rock. This is the politics of brinkmanship that is driving us. The American Constitution is still going through an amendment. It is a political process. If we really want to go back to 1914 and start to fight ourselves over, we all know that we were not a nation. Earlier than that, we were broken into little splinters. And that is the heart of our ethnic politics. When we talk about the real sentiments of the restructuring, are we talking about breaking into 360-something ethnic republics? Yeah. What will my state, Plateau State, be? Where if you walk 5 kilometers, you would have met 7 ethnicities.
Right.
But quickly, I think those of us in this hall, thank God my brother is here from Nextier. I think these two documentaries from your collaboration with Eradua Center, it is very important that elites, when they sit like this, you play nowhere to run and swallow to them. Because that is what will really bring us to the default setting. That in 5 decades to come, everybody is going to converge in the middle belt. Because of all ocean surge.
Yeah.
Because of ocean surge.
Yeah.
And also the desert encroachment. So all this arrogance about your land, about your ancestral land, you are all going to come to middle belt, and you are going to meet us.
Climate change is coming for all of us. That's, let me give the last word. So we just have, can you just a few minutes, the other question about how do we leverage diversity to answer, I think you answered that question by saying we should all get into politics, as many diverse voices as possible. So we'll leave that there. And final word to Mr. Anyanwu, a few closing sentences so we can wrap this up because we're already over time.
Yeah, thank you. Again, it was a privilege to be here. I think one of the factors that we left out, and I think the general alluded to it, is the issue of climate change and the role that it plays in the farmer-herder crisis. I think that's something that's very important. I think a lot of this boils down to leadership and governance. And just to share a story, you know, I used to head an opinion polling company called NOI Polls. And in 2011, we did a poll to ask Nigerians, you know, what do you think should be the qualities of a president? You know, is it their education? Is it their religion? You know, is it their ethnic background? But about 38% of the respondents, which was the majority, said it was just competence. Okay, so you know, when it comes to roads, infrastructure, services, I think Nigerians just want leaders who deliver. So I just want to lay that point out there.
That's a perfect way to close. Thank you so much to all of the panelists for a fascinating, fantastic, substantive discussion that I think was nuanced on this very important issue. So thank you very much. Really appreciate it. And thank you to everybody for listening. And I guess that's it. Over to you, whoever, to close us out.
Amaka, you know, just watching you perform assures me that our future is secured. Wonderful. Let's put our hands together for our ladies and gentlemen. Chairman, please, and the CEO, please join them. So, okay, Honorable Minister, please. Thank you very much.
What are we doing? Oh, picture. Oh, I didn't hear. I was like...
And so as we're having the photograph, let me quickly announce that tomorrow we'll be starting 9 for 9, particularly because of our virtual audience who will have been waiting before 9 o'clock. It will be 9 for 9. On behalf of the organizers of this event, and on behalf of my co-anchor, Oladile Ogula, I'd like to thank all of you for being part of this. Let's do it again tomorrow morning. 9 a.m. we'll be starting promptly. Thank you very much. Have a wonderful night rest. Good night.